Welcome back, everybody, for the second session with the panel, which, as you can see, is getting smaller and smaller. We don't know how he's going to sit there in the end. I'm happy to have Carolina back here again. She's not in the panel, though, because she's still kind of suffering from the flu, but she's here with us, and I hope you get better soon. But she's going to have her workshops as she has done the last days. Very brave. So back to us and the talk. I lost my paper. What are we going to talk about? No, so I think, yeah, right. I think interesting question now, where I think there are some clear differences, or I hope, is the perspective of what a character is and whether it's important in the training, and if so, in which way is it important in the training? So I would be kind of curious to see if we can. This is very nerdy acting thing, and I think it's important because it's how we're gonna work. It's about how theater looks. It's about how theater represents, and so on. So I would be curious if we can try to be, if all of you can try to be as precise as possible about this question. Is character important, and if so, how and why, and if not, how and why? Camilla, would love to start with you. You have the mic under you.
Okay. Yes, character is important. Is that short enough? I can speak about how I think and work about character, and I just want to say that I don't represent the whole approach at the NTA of how we work with character. I don't consider what I do with students there as acting training, but text work, and just to have that said, so don't think that what I'm talking about is the whole approach at the NTA. Carmen Lara, for instance, works more with character work, and other teachers work more with that.
You can just talk for yourself.
Yeah. But I'm interested in the character as something which is written into the text and which is there. And as Ville said, the audience will see the character. I mean, for me, it's about trusting the text and that the character is there because of how it's written and what the text says, what the kind of character in the text says. So as a performer, I don't necessarily need to do so much about it. I am a body, and then there is the text, and the audience will mix those images. They will see the character. They will create the character, basically.
So character is linked to text, clearly, to you.
Yes.
What exists.
Yeah. When we speak of the idea of character, then of course you can create different images if you don't work with text, through costume or movement or what's around you in the scenographic image. And again, I think the audience might see characters or figures, so it's not only in the text in that sense, but when you work with text and character through a play, for instance.
Yes, Pierre?
Yeah, can I use this?
Yes, you can.
Okay. First of all, yeah, character is important, but I think we should think about a little why we use the word character. I think it is in European theater, it's pretty new. Before we talk about the role, even the role figure, we try to stay away from the word character. It's coming from the Anglo-Saxon surroundings in the States. We talked about this in my workshop yesterday, and character comes from the Greek character, which means the intent. It is when you burn in a letter in a cow, that's a character. Or even when you printed letters, letter that you use to print on the paper. So print and character is close. So it is the thing, the event that has happened to someone, the becomes a character. And I also think you have to look at the character from the actor's point of view and the character from the whole theater point of view. And I totally agree that the character is not in the actor, it's not in the audience, it's not in the play, it's not in the performance, it's somewhere in between there. And it's created from... I thought it was wrong, yes.
I thought I heard it.
But you heard me, right? Yeah. I wasn't imprinted, though. Right? So we can look at it different ways. And yet, way of working is the starting point for character work. And yet, when we called it character analysis at one point, and then he gave up that too, and called it back to movement psychology. So it is the readiness to, in a certain way, solve a dramatic problem. That could be in a script, or it could be in the context of other, in another form. So yeah, it's important, and it's a tool for the character to transform. And I liked Ville's approach that you can pretend that the character is there, and either I go to the character or the character come to me, or we meet in the middle. And you pretend that it is like that. Of course, it doesn't exist there, but it's a good way of pretending for the actor.
Okay, Gianluca, you want to answer the question as well?
Yes. Now I have to be short. In the way I work, and in my opinion and approach, character is the addition of all the tasks, the contracts that I work with in a specific aesthetical contract, which creates the limitations of my expression as an actor. So is all the things I cannot do as an artist on stage, or all the things that I say and I do. So it's this sort of cage that is around me as an actor, as an artist actor. I have a potential to do infinitive things. And then comes the character, or this contract, all these tasks, all these things that I have to say, that I have to do, that becomes a limitation. Let's say that I'm on stage with you, and I have to say, so how did your workshop went yesterday? I have to say this line. So no matter what I'm experiencing, no matter what I'm thinking, the coffee or the bars, I will have to say this. This is a limitation. It's a sort of obstacle. And these obstacles, in my opinion, creates this friction that it's interesting. It's like if you have a bottle of Coca-Cola, and you shake it really, really hard, and then you try to open it very, very slow, and some stuff will stay inside, some stuff will go outside. So the actor's potential is bigger for me than the character, and the character is a limitation of the actor's potential, which create obstacles, frictions, gaps, and expression. This is my idea of character.
Ville, you also want to answer the question, or you want to?
Yeah, I could go a little bit further because we were already talking about characters, but I think somewhere in here is also the question that an actor has always have to have something to act, and it becomes like this alive for me. For instance, this diagonal exercise, usually the first one, when you just are asked to walk past the room, the experience is that you feel insecure. This is often like this, because you didn't know, you didn't have a purpose, you didn't have a goal, you didn't have a task, or the task was just to walk. And an actor usually asks, why am I doing this? Where am I going? From where do I come from? Who am I? Just to walk is not enough, kind of. For dancers, this is something that separates, if we make very rough kind of separations, a dancer from an actor. And for me, instance, when I was young, I was now and then asked to be a conferencier, a host for an evening of some kind. You know, there are numbers of music or whatever. I felt very uncomfortable on stage. And I didn't understand why. Just coming in and say, hey, welcome to this evening. My name is Ville Sandqvist, and I will be the host for the evening, and the first number is this and that. I was so, oh. Then I understood, oh no, I have to act and host. I have to, and nothing changed. I came in the same way, had the same lines, but it was much more easier for me. Because I had this idea of, okay, I'm not pretending to be myself, I'm pretending to act myself, in a way. So, but then the character, I think more about that you have to have something to act, and the character that comes from a text or whatever, it can also come from wherever else. I've been doing quite a lot of device theater and these kind of things that we are in a process and build up something, and you act just a standing man on the stage. And that can be quite hard if you don't understand that now my task is here to act a standing man on the stage. And there's no narrative. There's just spaces and dynamics and whatever. It's more like this. I've been working also a lot with dancers. So this is something, but you need to have something to act, and you need to have the idea of that. And that can be a character in a very traditional way.
One of the big criticisms of the term character and this way of thinking in the 80s, 90s in theater went in a direction where the idea of the character, or to work with a character in theater and in acting, would take the actor away from the actual situation that was the theater space, and the relationship between the actors and the audience, for instance. Is this a kind of criticism that you can kind of identify with or understand, or is the character a possible thing that can take you away from the theater space? How to deal with this as a problem?
Yeah, well, here we go back to a sort of more aesthetical dialogue. But I think that in a way, you have a lot of things you do and you say when you're on stage. These things will be shared with other people, as you said, watching, and they will be having an interpretation. The character is also something that happens between me and them. So it is this interpretation that we have to talk about this interpretation, and we usually, like we do with everything. I mean, I'm Italian, we give sex to everything, for example. We call cheers for guys and, you know, or females, like, you know, we personalize things. So if I have to talk about what you have done, I could refer. So there is a linguistic thing to express my interpretation of what I experience when I watch you doing something on stage. And this is a level of talking about it. Or else there is an aesthetical preference that refers to an idea of me believing in the character and trying to find the core of this man in a sort of fourth wall, psychological, realistic theater where some people felt this was alienating the audience. And we can discuss about this is true, not true, mirror neurons, are you really passive, not passive? So it's a sort of, I find it a very generalistic criticism. You need to sort of then get in the nuances of what we're talking about from which point of view, as Ville said, from the point of view of the audience, or the point of view of the creator, or the director, or, you know, yeah. But I think this word character is very hard to sort of just drop it, because it's a tool that we have to talk about something we experience together.
I think, yeah, it happened in the 1980s, and I think we have to look at it as a reaction against the not only realistic, psychologically realistic, but also naturalistic way of acting. It was a reaction against that, and then taking away the notion of character helped to find something new. and call it role or figure or something totally different. And it seems to me that we are back, we're using the notion of character differently, where it is a starting point for the mainly the actor, but it is not this that I go into my character. I am a character and then I do these things, I'm in action. So it's a different approach this time. So it's not going back to 1970s and before that. That's important.
Yeah, I agree. I can sort of identify with the sentence you said about character, but it depends on how you deal with the work of character. And as you were pointing out, the way it has been dealt with in the 20th century, then I think it has been standing in the way. It's become like a mask to hide behind also. So that's why I've been interested to question how we work with character or develop character. And I think it's more interesting, like how Ville and others have spoken about it, that you know, it's not about becoming or you know, take away yourself and become the character. It's about how you relate to this idea. You know, it's me, and then it's the text, and then it's the room and the audience and everything. How do these relations move? And how do I, as a performer, constantly in the moment deal with those relationships that are not stable?
I could have an example. My first, in this artistic research, my first artistic work was to play Hamlet. It was a dream I had since some 1994, and 10 years later I built up a group and we did it. And I worked quite a lot with the director to have some kind of idea how I do want to work with it, and came up with that I will play Horatio that will do Hamlet. It came from the play where we started also with the last lines where Horatio is about to drink of the poison, but Hamlet says, no, stop, you're not allowed to drink of it, you have to go on and tell the story. So this was the kind of the Horatio doing the stuff, and he's for 400 years touring around with this small group. We were 4 actors telling this story, and he plays the story of, or tells the story of Hamlet. So I wasn't actually doing Hamlet, I was doing Horatio doing Hamlet. And then, quite in the early of the play, when the first soliloquy starts, I was sitting on a coffin alone on the stage, and this it was quite a small theater, and I was sitting there and deconstructing totally everything that had happened and everything that will come, in a way. I was sitting there looking at the audience, thinking of thoughts that comes up to my mind, and they were usually like this: here I am, here you are sitting, I'm playing this part of Hamlet or Horatio, I don't really know. We're here together, and I tried, and it was several minutes long, nobody said nothing. I looked at my hands or whatever, or there was sounds or some impulses. I was just thinking, oh, then there was some friends or something, oh, the other two, like this, a very long time. And then I started to think about at some point about my father, my own father, because this play was about Hamlet's father, and I understood during the process, okay, this is about also my father. This is a father-son relationship thing. And then slowly the soliloquy of this, the flesh that is solid started, and that was a soliloquy about who is this guy's father. But the most striking thing was that in this scene, this long scene, when I was sitting as Ville, my very old friends and relatives were it was very hard for them to look at me on stage, because they say that they always see Ville there. They know me so well, and we saw you, it's you, okay. And it's not so easy to see the character when you know me so good. But without me asking, the feedback I got from not one, but several of my very old friends and relatives, my family, was that specifically in that point, I was very much Hamlet. And this is something very strange. This is really strange, because it has something to do with these discoveries, but I don't understand it yet. But it's very strange that I became from them more the character than ever, when I was doing the less I could to play or act anything. And this is interesting. It's only interesting. I don't know how to do it again or whatever. That's not a method or a technique you can find, but it's something we have to consider and think about.
Dear audience, I also want to bring in you, okay? So if some of you have some questions and comments, you are welcome to start, okay?
I wanted to just precise a couple of things. Because when you remember when I made this example about the private self, the artistic self, and the creation, it's also a matter of when we enter in the room, we also sort of create a contract together with the audience about also where the focus should be. So it's also about what we are looking at. I can look at you doing something and focus on what is your creation. So it could be Hamlet, there's a Hamlet there that you work with. Or I could work about Øystein working with Hamlet. Or I could work about the private Øystein who has a job, which is the one to be an actor that works with Hamlet. So, and this is also a contract that I can establish with the audience. And I think sometimes the audience has become more and more sophisticated, and we give for granted that this contract is created also there together with the audience. So I can also work on what I call suspension of reality. I can be the actor and asking you, just look at, let's now pretend that I'm going to be this Hamlet. So look at me as Hamlet, because you make me Hamlet by looking at me as Hamlet. So there is, and this aspect of creating a contract with the audience when we create a performance, I think is a bit underestimated because of these three levels, you know, and to be clear of what, or to play with this, I could, change this contract along the way and then do what is my understanding of Brecht in a way, going out or showing other sides of what I'm doing there, you know.
I would also like to bring in a role as the dramaturgical role that you have in the play, in the whole. That's also one unity for me. The role, the character, the human behind it, all these kind of things. And for me personally, I just want to, when I go to theater and see an actor on stage, I never see the character. I always see a human on stage trying to do something, sometimes connected to the acting training, sometimes connected to her or his idea of what the character is. And that's not uninteresting, okay? So I'm not against that, but that's what I see. I see a person on stage trying to work with an idea of what a character is and give us this. I think in film, for me personally, that's different. That's a different way of perceiving.
I think we have the ability to imagine together, which is something we underestimate. We have the ability to ask each other, can you look at me like this and I do this? There is this chord, let's imagine, let's work with suspension of reality.
Yeah.
Let's imagine that this is this and then we do this.
Yeah.
This creates a different way of interacting.
Yeah, but the reason why I said it is also, I think that what you say about double contract, we can see the human on stage at the same time as we see the try to make a character or the role. We can see all these things at the same time on all these contracts. Yes?
Yeah, just a short.
Wait, can I give you a...
That was my character.
Thank you. I'm just wondering if you guys think that character development should be an individual process for the actor, or if it's something you do collaboratively with the ensemble. The character development, should that be an individual process for the actor, or do you believe that that's something you do in collaboration with the ensemble?
Both.
You want to specify where you would ask, I'm just, because there's so many different techniques here, and so many different institutions. So I'm therefore curious to see how they differentiate, if you begin with the development as a group, or if you begin individually, or where's your starting point?
You probably have your weight somewhere here, if you put up a scale.
The what?
If you make a scale that you do it in a group or you do it alone, I am sure you place yourself differently here on the scale.
Well, if you're a solo, you do it alone, but you don't do it alone, because then you bring it to the audience. We had in our workshop, it was one participant that was sick, so one had to work with both characters, A and B. So did she work on that alone, or did she work it together with something else? But of course you have to bring it into the ensemble, if it is an ensemble piece. Character is just a part of what is the creative process before you bring it to an audience.
I agree with both, but there's of course an order, you could say, and I think about just, we are actually in my workshop, we are working with characters in a way, or acting. And if I think about what we've been doing, we've been starting always as an ensemble, as a group, and then we are working quite a lot, and I do emphasize that, alone, at the same time in the same room, so it's quite a chaotic going on over there. So, and then we work alone, and then we present some drafts, I call them, to each other, and then we go on working alone, and we are searching for these characters, and we usually find tens of them, and we try to figure out are they interesting or not, and then we go together and put them to interact. But it's this kind of process.
Who wants to answer? No?
Well, as I said, I'm not so interested in the character work, but as I teach the text work, we're not focusing on creating a character. We're focusing on how we relate to the text and the space and everything that's in the space. And I think it's not, I think a character is created always in relation, because everything is in relation. So even if you're working on your own, you're always relating to the text, to some costumes, to some objects. That feeds to you as well. You know, I don't think we draw everything from our autonomous inside. You know, it's always comes, things help us to imagine also.
You just don't worry about character.
No. It comes anyway. I mean, as I said, I think the audience creates the character, mainly.
Well, there are many layers, but I could just give an example of one layer. For example, one concept that is important for me is this idea of the missing parts. That there is always this, there is a unity of character. I mean, there is a unity of storytelling. So there is a piece of me in Ville, and there is a piece of Ville in me, for example. So I do this analysis of the missing parts. So for example, we could take Nina of the Seagull, and we could do an exercise where we use all the actors, and then you go and you try to find the missing part. So the actor would be asked to find among the others that are there herself as a young talented actress with a dream, blah, 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 and then you would find something just to contextual to what you see there, put it in the space, so put all these missing parts in the space and see what happens to you when you externalize the internal conflict, for example, and you put it in space. So I work a lot with taking elements that we can call character and finding ways to externalize them in space to make them three-dimensionals, so that you can understand that there's something of you in everything around you, and that there's a conflictuality. You know, there is sort of.
So to answer clearly to his question, it sounds like yes, you have to work together.
Yes.
That's a fundamental
at least
point.
in my work is very related to group.
No character exists only in the relationship.
Theater for me is people. Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's interesting to demystify this character. You know, I think we struggle too much with it. I think we can relax more about the character and not worry so much. You know.
So it's a very pragmatic perspective. Huh? That's a very pragmatic perspective. Per?
Yeah, I agree that I think it is a book by Stanislavski called Building the Character. And I don't believe in building, that you put one piece and another piece and another piece and then you have the character. It is a question of viewpoints and finding the other viewpoint. So you become the other in some sort, with the body and behavior. And then of course the audience see the other that they need to see. They see Hamlet because it was called Hamlet. If it was called Oedipus, they would probably see you as Oedipus, because that was the opening and then they came into it. So they wanted to see that other, and we can call it a character, the other viewpoint. And I think that's what theater is, or art is about, is to see the other, to leave myself and see the other as an audience or spectator, or to be or get to somewhere else, to change. Art is about changing.
Comment on this, Camilla?
Yeah, maybe it's also about transformation, if that's possible.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think you can ever become anyone else than who you are, but you are not a specific limited thing either. You know, so for me it's about expanding my own expressions, maybe do something that I never did before and nobody saw me do before, and that's gonna feel different and look different, you know, so really exploring myself or what I can do or not, you know, and you can do so many things, you know, in relation to everything else.
Where is the mic? The audience mic, yeah. Okay, can you send it first maybe to them?
Thank you. I come from directing, so that's my point of view. And at some level in this discussion, I keep thinking, but yes, we can talk about the character and how I build a character, or is it not building a character? Is it a role? What is it? And but as a director, my first most concern is how do we build this universe together? You know, that we're in this together, and I think a lot of the time I spend time as a director talking about what do you want? I mean, going back to Stanislavski, what do you want to try to get it out of me and my character and what I'm doing, because it comes so internal and it's very uninteresting. And it comes back to my first year from school as well, that, you know, our director was saying, you're doing all this great stuff on stage, but it's not being shared with the audience. So it's that dimension of what do I share with my co-partners in this play, coming out from what do I want, what drives me to do these things, and then every time when I kind of keep pointing that, what do you want, how are you going to get it, you know, then there's more sharing going on, it becomes more active. is that transition coming from, you know, what are we doing to actually make the action happening, and then, and I think also a very tricky thing to talk about and try to explain is that, I would be interested in actually hearing what you think about it, or how do you teach that, or how to actually share with the audience what's going on. You know, how do you explain to your students or to your actors or, you know, the people I work with, that notion of now you're sharing, now you're not sharing, because like you're saying, it's expression. What's the audience left with? What do you want them to leave with somehow?
Do you want to ask the question to someone precisely? Because I'm not sure if we have time for a long round.
Yeah, I'll ask you.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm concerned with the continuous question of why am I here? Why, and not only why am I here on this stage, but why are we here? What do we want out of this sharing time and space? And what are the potentials of this encounter? And I'm concerned, as you say, to try to remove the focus from how am I doing, what am I doing, do I express the right thing or the wrong thing, you know, to move it out here somehow, or to at least a little bit further away from me as a performer. And that's why I talk about the text material as something in the space between the performer and the audience, as something we explore together. So for me, the connecting to the audience is about connecting to the audience. It's like, hey, what is this text about? What am I saying here? Can you help me? Help me to figure out what this is about. And you know, I work with this idea of the thing, so the text is only partly possible for any of us to understand, and there is a caring for the text, which is about accepting that it brings something on in itself, which none of us can control, and it's exciting to sort of explore it from all kinds of. So I'm talking a lot about trying to activate that relation constantly of, you know, every time I say something, to make it sort of a question to the audience, and not saying, I know what this is. Do you know what this is? You know, which is a power thing. Yeah.
Will want 30 seconds?
Yeah, 30 seconds. This is a question about expression. We didn't have the time, but I think that you as an actor should also relate your expression to the whole performance and actually have a picture in your head on the stage of the performance expression and responsibility on that. So it's this question of expression, for me, it goes very wide, and it's not only a question of how I relate to my expression in here, because my expression is in a relationship. So I go quite often, frequently, to the auditorium to look at what's the stage like, and I try to explore it and look how, and the dynamics and whatever. So this is a crucial question, and I trust very much the director's kind of this feedback. It's better for you to stand over there and, okay, this expression of the performance is now what we are looking for.
5 seconds. Can I just say,
please,
refer to what I think Camilla said the other day, that maybe we should leave the notion of presence and instead talking about relating, and that's communicating.
I work on training the limbic interaction. I work on training the limbic interaction.
Which is the
limbic.
Under your pre-cortex.
Limbic.
What
connected to the limbic function of the brain.
The oldest system of the brain. Okay.
That's limbic. Limbisk på norsk. På limbisk.
The system that reacts directly on
it's a series
stimulus.
of functions in the brain that controls energy, movement, the connection, perception of room, and the creation of memory.
Okay, Maria, you have a...
It's about the character work. So I also always ask, what did I do in the audition? What kind of direction did I get in the audition? And what was the first conversation with the director about? Why is he or she attracted to working with me? What do they see as my potential? And so that's sort of the first question. And then maybe I got a part from an audition, and then I got a costume that doesn't fit at all with what I was doing at the audition, and I know that it was the audition that landed me the job. Then maybe I have to discuss the costume with the director and the costume designers. And then we find like an agreement about that, and then the physicality comes. So, and also from the, I agree with Gianluca, but the limitation of the text is always shaping it, and also the situation. So then you sort of, or I find a body in that, and body is also part of the, yeah, very big part of the character for me.
Okay.
Just wanted to say.
No, it's really good. You don't need to have a question. So, anyone else has a comment? Yes? Could you send the mic forward?
Yeah, I wonder if maybe instead of thinking of character as a problem or something that we hide behind or that prevents us from sharing, if we can think of it as device or potential for sharing, in the sense that if you don't think of like this professionalism and that the actor can do anything and their role is a cage or limitations, but if we take away the professional self and say there's loads of things that I as a human can do, and there's loads of things that the character can do. So instead of thinking of that there's something I hide behind, it's kind of more that a door that I step through and that allows me to do all these things that I can't do. And then there's all these things that I can do that the character can't, and if I do that anyway, I kind of, in the same time, also expand the traditional idea of that character or role as it's written. And through that, we kind of get this third new self or thing in space that has bigger potential than both me and the character that we can share and explore together, maybe.
I just want to precise that I didn't mean cage as a negative thing.
No.
But as a fantastic thing, in the sense that it's amazing that I find myself in front of her, and I look at her, and everything can happen between us. But I have to tell her, what time is it? I can't tell her anything else. And this is a fantastic thing, I think, because it's a limitation. It's a sort of friction between all the things that can happen and all the things that the form, the structure. And I think this is something that really, if you embrace it, can create a fantastic three-dimensionality in a way.
Okay. Our time is out. I want to give the last word to Camilla. Camilla is now, it's the last day with us here. Thank you. Camilla is coming back tomorrow to replace Camilla. You want to have a final comment on what we're discussing?
Yeah, I think what you just did, it's not so far away. You know, I come back to this thing that we're actually, in many ways, doing the same thing, but we use different language. Because I agree. For me, I would say that the text, instead of being the obstacle, is the bridge between you and her in that moment, where of course anything can happen. It's a tool to communicate. So.
Yeah. I'm not sure if we will conclude, if we agree or not. I'm still curious to find out. But we have one more last day. Maybe it will be clear. Thank you, panel and audience. See you tomorrow.